So there's a lot of anxiety that's circulating around IPAs and how it is that we're going to be monitoring for these, and what about if we miss one? How are we going to know if we missed one? Who's going to be looking at it? Is there a policy? Is there a protocol? Who's going to write that? When does it start? Who's going to tell us? So we created this note, and that's why I opened it up to administrator, director, and MDS coordinator, so that all of you could hear it and understand that this is being looked at and that we've developed a tool for us to be able to monitor it. One of the first things to know is that an IPA is an optional assessment. So after the 10-1 to 10-7 transition, where everybody who's still in-house from September is put through an IPA, it becomes an optional assessment, and you're only going to complete it when your rate is going to increase. Okay, so and the rate is going to change the day of the ARD that you use for that IPA. So in fear that someone perhaps isn't looking at it, or perhaps not going through the work to determine whether or not you should do an IPA, we're making this note automatically fire on day 15 from admission and every 7 days after that. So that's the automatic fire. But you have the ability as an MDS coordinator on any given day to go in and open up one of these notes. So you don't have to wait for day 7 to come for it to open up, and then you're going to go in and decide. If you're sitting in morning report, or you happen to be in a standards of care meeting, or some kind of conversation comes up that it becomes evident that there's a change that potentially could change your rate, you can go in and open this note up at any time. So the note is called MDS Coordinator IPA Surveillance. So the 3 notes that the MDS people are doing is a summary note for days 1 through 4, and then another summary note for days 5 through 8, and then this IPA Surveillance. And so when you ask why did we choose day 15 for this note to fire for the first time, it's because the MDS coordinator is already completing 2 notes within the first 8 days. So we went 7 days from there. So you will put the dates in, and this is the last ARD. So whatever MDS we have in the system right now currently paying for the patient's stay is the ARD that we're looking to use. So I'm just going to put in something from August. Obviously, it won't be until October. And what type of MDS is it? It's a 5-day. And so 3 weeks down the road, you do an IPA, you'll have this, and you'll do an IPA the next time you look at it. If you do another assessment, this might say that there's already 1 IPA that's been done. So whatever type of assessment you're completing that's paying for the stay, and what was the date of that. What is the current PDPM score that you got on that ARD? So I like cake, so I'm going to use cake. This note is set up to be exactly the way we've taught you about the 4 letters of the PDPM score. So K being representative of the PT-OT component, A being representative of the speech component, this K representing nursing, and E representing NTA. And the note is built exactly that way. First we look at PT-OT, then we look at speech, then we look at nursing, and then we look at NTA. So if I was doing this note for the first time, probably what I would first do is take care of all of these current CMIs based on this score. So the current PT CMI would be a K. And when you hit that little eyeglass, it's going to open up what a K is. It's medical management with a GG of 10 to 23, and the CMI is 1.52. Then you're going to have the same thing for OT. It's a K, and that CMI is 1.54. Then I would go down to the speech, and that's an A, and an A is none or neither with a CMI of 0.68. You can check all this stuff against your clipboard. That's where I took the information from to create the tool. And the next for nursing would be K, and that is a special care low with a GG of 6 to 14 and no depression because it ends in a 1. And your E for your NTA, which is 1 to 2 points. So now you have all that preliminary stuff out of the way. You don't have to do it that way, but to me, it just seemed easier. Has there been a change to the primary reason for SNF admission? So remember, under PT and OT, there's only 2 things that really change and influence that component. And it's the primary reason for admission and section GG. So those are the only 2 questions that are being asked in that portion of the note. So has there been a change to the primary reason? The answer to this most often is going to be no, but there is a potential that someone with a longer length of stay does go out to the hospital and come back with something that is more significant than what they were there for initially, and the bulk of their care is surrounded by that diagnosis. So the answer could be yes. And if you say yes, it's then going to ask you if that primary reason for admission, that change, does it change the clinical category? So sometimes you'll have a new diagnosis, a new primary diagnosis, but it's still going to keep you in medical management. So we're going to say no. And just like the summary note, you have the ability to pull up this eyeglass to see what any of the new diagnosis was if you answer yes. Is there a change in the functional performance, the rehab score for GG? And you're going to be able to take a look at that and look back several days to find out if there's been a change and answer this question. If you say yes, it's going to ask you now, what does it look like? So we're going to say it was 6 to 9. So now what is the new PT and OT CMI? We are still in medical management, but with a GG of 6 to 9. Hit your eyeglass. Find medical management 6 to 9, and you will see that that's a J. You'll hit the eyeglass. For OT, it will be the same. So those two are always going to be the same category. Now you move on to speech. What's the current? We have it as an A, meaning none and neither. This red here lets you know that on this side of the slash, or backslash, whatever you want to call it, is addressing the acute neurological condition, the speech comorbidity, and whether or not they have impaired cognition. And on the other side of the slash, we're talking about swallowing problems and mechanically altered diets. So primary reason for SNF was changed to an acute neurological condition, yes or no? The only reason that question is showing up is because you said there was a change in that primary diagnosis. If you were to say no, that question wouldn't even be here. Has a new speech comorbidity been identified since that last ARD of 8/26? And so we can say yes, or if you can't remember what the speech comorbidities are, you can say yes, and it's going to open this up and let you see what they are. So let's just say yes, someone came in and now they have aphasia. Okay. Has there been a change in cognitive status since that last ARD? And we'll say yes, and they'll want to know what it is. And they are now mildly impaired. So right now we have a speech comorbidity and impaired cognition on one side of the slash. Has symptoms of swallowing problem been documented since the last ARD? If you use this question mark, it's going to open up that meal surveillance documentation for you to be able to answer the questions about whether or not CNAs coded a swallowing problem. When you say yes, it's going to take it a step further and ask now, was a swallowing problem confirmed by licensed staff? So we can't just go and take it because the CNAs documented it and then we just leave it at that. That's why there are alerts going to the nurses when this gets coded, and people are to be looking into it. Speech can look at them, OT can look at them, dietary can look at them, the licensed nurse can look at it. But we can't just have random notes of documentation that hasn't been confirmed. So then it's going to say, was the swallowing problem confirmed? We're going to say yes. And did we basically change the diet to mechanically altered since that? And I'm going to say yes as well. So now we have aphasia and an impaired cognition on one side, so that's 2, and then a swallowing and diet on the other, so that's both. If you use this little eyeglass, you're going to find 2 and both, and see that that is an I with a CMI of 3.51. Now sometimes an IPA decision is going to be pretty easy. You'll see that you're going to go from a 0.68 to a 3.51, and that almost becomes a no-brainer. You'll still want to put everything into your calculator to make sure at the end, but you can pretty much be confident that you're going to do that when you have such a vast change. Now you have your nursing, which is a K, special care low, GG of 6 to 14, and no depression because it ends in a 1. This is always going to be trying to get you into a higher category. So because you're in special care low, you could also be high or you could be extensive. Those are above them. So it starts off by asking, can you gain qualifiers for extensive services if you use a new ARD? If you can't remember what those qualifiers are, you can hit yes. and you will see then it's trach and vent, trach or vent isolation. So not likely that someone's going to all of a sudden have a trach or a vent added after they've been there. Isolation might be an opportunity, but again, very strict in trying to get that. So we'll say no. Does the resident have any of the following? Still trying to get you now into special care high. Remember, these 4 things with a fever would get you into special care high. So if this person now in morning report you heard has been diagnosed with pneumonia, we would say yes. Now it's going to ask about a temperature. But you see, if you didn't have any of that, it doesn't even ask you because the fever only matters with those 4 things. So we'll say pneumonia. What's the baseline temp? I'm going to say 98. And then it's going to ask you, did the resident have the fever? Just like your summary note, you can click on this question mark and see the data for the temperatures over the past 7 days and answer this question. I'm going to say no. So now we're still in special care low because pneumonia without a fever doesn't help me. Keeps me right where I am. So did I gain special care high qualifiers using the ARD? So there's not only those 4 with fever, there's other things that could potentially have me in special care high. If I can't remember what they are and I hit yes, it's going to give me a drop down to see what those are. So let's just say, oh, okay, nope, we don't have any of those things. They're not short of breath with lying flat right now, even though they have pneumonia, but maybe we want to check on that documentation to see if that can happen. So I'm going to say no, there's nothing going on with that. Does the resident exhibit mood symptoms? Again, you have a question mark here to be able to look at mood surveillance for the past 14 days and make a determination about whether that's being documented. This question will only show up when you have C's, L's, and H's ending in 1, because otherwise you've captured the depression if it has a 2. So that's the only time it will be there. So we're going to say yes, it was documented. When you say yes, it will give you a prompt to remind you that you need a frequency score of at least 10 to make that work for you. And I'm going to assume that we do. Does the resident lose special care low? So I'm still in special care low right now, but with depression. Am I going to lose what got me into that category? I'm going to say yes. Well, now I need to know what's the next best thing for nursing. If I've lost my special care low, do I have something that'll at least keep me in clinically complex? If I say yes, it's going to, of course, ask me what that is, and this reminds you. And let's say we started somebody on oxygen because of that pneumonia diagnosis. Is there a change in functional performance for nursing? There will be a look back here for you to look at GGs and make that decision. So we're going to say no. But now, what is the new CMI for nursing? So we've lost our special care low qualifier. Okay, so that's going to put us in clinically complex. GG hasn't changed. So it should be a C, BC, but it should be a 2. And here is a C, BC, 2, and that's an N. And it's a 1.54. So you have to look at this and understand that even though you're losing a special care low qualifier, because you had something for clinically complex and you picked up depression, the CMI is still higher. So you can't make decisions on the surface to say, oh, well, I would lose this, so I'm not going to do it. You've got to go through the process. This is new to all of us. All of the things you see in these notes that I'm creating for you are visual prompts and educational opportunities. And it's the same stuff that I need to learn it. All right, the same things your regionals are going to need to do to make these decisions while this is new to everyone. Okay, so use the tools for what they've been designed to do. What is the NTA? So it's 1 to 2 points. Are there any new clarified diagnosis? So did we get something new, or did a doctor come in now and change the ICD-10 to a specificity that gets us something different, is what the question is. If you say yes, it's going to show you all of these different diagnoses and how many NTA points you pick up by gaining those. All right, so this is only new. You already have 1 to 2 points already. Okay, so let's just say they have 2 because of diabetes and they had diabetic retinopathy. So they already have 2 points, right? Or just the diabetes alone is 2. You only care about other things that are here, and there may not be any. Maybe there are new or clarified diagnoses, but they don't help us with NTA, so you would say none. But let's say now there's malnutrition. That's going to take me up to 3. Are there any new services provided? If you say yes, it's going to show you all the services that are NTA drivers and how many NTA points they are. So if you put somebody on isolation, or if they got suctioned, if they all of a sudden had intermittent catheterization, whatever it may be. And you can say no. And are there any new skin-related concerns? If you say yes, it's going to open it up and ask you, do they have a stage 4, a diabetic foot ulcer, a wound infection, any of that. So you can always hit yes if you can't remember what the qualifiers are, and then just hit no to take you out of it. Now, what is the new CMI going to be? So we added 1 additional point, and we're going to bring them 3 to 5. Will an IPA be completed? You're going to have to put in all of these CMIs and figure it out. You say yes. It tells you set the ARD for today. And what is your projected IPA PDPM score? And you could actually do this part first, because I changed that calculator for you so that now you can put in the PDPM score and get the CMI instead of a CMI and get the letters. So the new score is going to be J I N D. Much easier than trying to put in what all the different CMIs are. And then the bottom part is still for the MDS coordinators to identify why the person is still skilled under Medicare at this point in time. So is it about cardiac and respiratory? It should match the daily skilled notes. It should match what's on the cert. It should match all the discussions that are surrounding this patient about why the person is still being skilled. It's going to ask if they receive therapy at least 5 times a day, 5 times a week, because remember, in the absence of a nursing skill, rehab is still very relevant in being able to maintain Medicare skill. If you say yes, it wants to know which disciplines, okay? If you say no, it wants to know the last treated day. I'm going to revise this to add an additional question to accommodate people who were never on therapy from the time they were admitted to you. So they only came for nursing. So I want to give you that option. And then, was there a planned discharge date? If you say yes, they want to know the date. And that is really the bulk of the note being done. And so again, it seems like it's time consuming because we're going through it and we're explaining each of the things and showing you that, but we've really gone through and tried to make it as user-friendly as possible, making it available to show you the components, the GG, the CMIs, and have all that stuff readily available to you.